So I'm gonna give a really high level understanding of transportation, how we work with county, city, MPO, and then talk about funding and how it trickles down, how a project comes to be. All right, cool. So I do have some notes, just so you know. They do that to keep me on track and on time, because I would easily take the rest of the day talking about transportation. So if you see me cheating, that's what I'm doing. So in my introduction, they kind of touched on it. We have 3.4 million residents in our district, District 7. And I'll talk a little bit more about the area District 7 later in the presentation. But there's about 40 to 43 million miles traveled by people in our district. So when we start to look at, when we talk about multi-modes, when we talk about multi-forms of transportation, we really are looking at everything, because we have that many people that we're trying to move regularly in our district. So the whole show, whose line is it anyway? Whose road is it anyway, right? And that's a really funny thing, because you would think it would be really easy, and there are some easy ones, right? Like, we own the interstate. I don't think anyone debates that, right? And we own the U.S. routes. I don't think anyone debates that. But where it starts to get a little blurry is when you get into some of the roads that maybe you do or you didn't know that we own. And sometimes it's because it is a U.S. route, but it has a local name, et cetera. So for us, the federal and state are the primary of ours. So if you see a county sign, you see a city sign, that's going to be the city. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't collaborate on those, because we have programs to do that. So I don't want you to think that just because it's not a federal state road that the DOT won't get involved. And the big thing for the state roads, and our primary focus, is moving people and goods as efficient as possible. That's our primary focus. So that's all the times where the city, the county, MPO come in, because they say, hey, you need a little local touch here. You need to understand what's going on here. Todd talked a little bit about, the turning radius downtown for a truck. Those are the kind of conversations we like to have locally, because I may not see that. So where does the funding come from? From our standpoint, a lot of it's user fees. So gas tax is a big one for the state of Florida. Freight tax, licenses, registrations when you rent a rental car. Obviously, for the locals, the dock stamps, development tax, ad valorem taxes, et cetera. And I'll tell you one other thing too, for the federal government, they have user fees and all that they collect funds and provide to us as well, which we'll get into that in a minute. So how are the funds distributed? Because this is important. There's the local driven initiatives, either come from the city, come from the county, passed down. There's state administered funds, so those are state funds that we collected and we're administering back down through the district. And then there's federally assisted, which the federal government comes in and says, hey, we have this pot of money, and really it's a lot of pot of money, to be specific, about 254 different pots of money. But regardless, pots of money, and they say, hey, this is where this money can be spent. DOT find a way to get this money into the community. I know this is riveting. Transportation is just riveting. I always love that I got such an I'm a very high energy person, and transportation is not high energy, but we're gonna make it happen. So District 7, like I said, we're 5 counties. So we're Hillsborough, Pinellas, Pasco, Hernando, and Citrus County. So that's why I say I need the local touch, because I'm looking at 5 different counties on the regular. I have people come to me and they go, well, you know about that pothole? And I'm like, well, I probably don't know about that pothole unless I've driven down there. So we have 5 interstates, 40 municipalities, so 40 cities, 43 million miles driven every day, like I talked about. The ports, 2 international airports, and then 3 transit authorities. And there's actually a 4th about to come online. So the best way I found to talk about a really complex situation is to use graphics. And so the best way to show it is, so we have the DOT, the MPO, and then the local, and when we say local agencies, city, county, et cetera. And you see there in the top of the tree, those are the type of projects that we're gonna focus and we're gonna prioritize, okay? So for a state facility, ports, airports, intermodal, highway capacity, and then we have the lower there, the crosswalk safety projects, regional trails. We build a lot of trails. Working with the MPO, there's a lot of the same, right? So the MPO is the kind of the envoy between the state and the locals. So the MPO has a lot of the same, and then the same thing. So you get into the state or local facilities, really, you start to cross lines, crosswalks, resurfacings. We're starting to worry a little bit more community-focused safety projects. ITS, which is Intelligent Transportation Systems, that's the signals that communicate. So you get down below, it talks about where does the money come from. Okay, I'm not going to go into each one of them, But just to give you an idea, big buckets, right? SIS is a big bucket. And when I say a big bucket, I mean in District 7, that's like $2.9 billion in my budget is SIS. So big bucket. So we kind of work our way over. You get to the Surface Transportation Block Grant, STBG. Those are the funds that the MPO directly controls, which is about 19 million. So you kind of feel the rhythm. So then SIGP, SCOP, TRIP on the far right, those are grant programs where we participate 50% with a local government, and we can either add capacity, we can modify signals, whatever we got to do to help traffic move more efficiently. And so those are a 50-50 match, us and the local government. That pot's about 70 million. So you kind of get the rhythm, billion, million, right? So I always say, where do projects come from? It's really not that complicated. I had my folks, I said, hey, can you put together a wheel to show me where does everything come from? And it was really funny because as we got into it, it just got more and more complicated as we went. So I'm going to try and as simply as possible break this down kind of as we go, okay? So first I'm going to start with the compass, DOT compass. So every organization needs something to guide them, right? Guiding principles, mission, et cetera. The compass was the way we found to clearly communicate what are our guiding principles for the DOT. So you see at the very center are communities, right? So that's where we started. We started in the very middle and we said we have to be a good partner with our communities. Now, if you've known the DOT long enough, you would say that is not the way we were before. But so being community focused, now kind of working our way out, right? Getting into resiliency, safety, workforce development, right? These are all technology, supply chain. These are all things that impact your community, right? So if I'm hiring people, workforce development, that's jobs for the community. It's a good thing. If I'm building things that are resilient when a hurricane comes, it operates more efficiently or it drains quicker, right? So we're back on it and we're moving. So you start to see that. And as we build out, that's how we built our projects with that in mind. So we kind of looked at what we could do to fulfill the compass. So where do projects come from? So I'm just going to kind of roll through it. So this is Transportation 101. So the first step's planning. Todd talked about planning, right? So they plan, we plan, the county plans, MPO plans, everybody's planning, right? We all got great ideas. And those plans, some of them are very large, some of them are very small. And from those plans, we come up with a project. So Todd touched on it. I'm going to use his as an example, even though my PowerPoint's going to go a different way. So he talked about the intersection there at 5th, right? We need to make it more friendly for a semi. So what are we going to do? We're going to go out and we're going to study it. And we're going to do an auto turn analysis, which no one needs to know what that is, but basically it's just how big of a turn does it need to be for the truck to make the turn. So we're going to go and we're going to do that. We're going to say, oh, we got some big sidewalks. Okay, we need to make sure we have a big sidewalk here, or a trail connection. So that's the planning level. We put a high-level picture together of what do we need to do. So then we hand that off to our environmental folks and we go, what kind of impacts are we going to have here? If I build this big intersection, what's going to happen? What's the community going to say to me? Am I going to impact a wetland? But also social impacts, right? Is there a church there that now all of a sudden traffic's getting closer to the church? Is there a park that I'm impacting? What am I doing, right? This is where we go out to the community. This is where you see us, right? You see us at a public meeting, public hearing, and we come out and we say, okay, let's talk about it with the community. So let's say we got past that, everybody's good, it passes all the environmental markers, we're moving into design and right-of-way. Right-of-way is real estate, okay? So that's me buying property. So I go to build this new intersection, I realize, hey, I got to clip the Burger King on the corner. What do I got to do? Or I got to clip a bank on a corner. I got to clip a CVS or a Walgreens. I have to go to them and say, hey, I've got to buy property from you. So that's my right-of-way process. Design is as it speaks. That's when the engineers really get in the weeds and they figure out what utility's in the way, what signal's in the way, what curb do I have to move, et cetera. So once I get past that, I get into construction. So if you see the photos are actually of the I-75 overpass road interchange. So I get into construction, and so now I'm building it, right? I'm building the intersection. I'm doing a little bit of public outreach as I go. I'm working with the businesses to understand what closures I may have, detours, et cetera. And then the last step is maintenance, right? So coming along and make sure I maintain it in a safe manner, et cetera. Now what's really interesting is every one of those steps I just talked about is also where a project can come from. So I'm going to real quickly tell you. So planning will say, hey, we got a need here. Let's build a project. The environmental group will be like, hey, while we were looking at that, we saw that we actually have an issue here with this impaired canal. We need to go fix that canal. When I get into design will say, hey, look, that intersection looked really good, but we noticed while we were evaluating it that down the way there's an issue that we need to fix, so our design actually needs to expand to fix that. Right away will say, hey, look, we see we can buy this property, but if we didn't buy that property, we could put a wall here and we can make it work and we won't impact that business. So that modifies and creates a project. Same thing in construction. Construction starts working and they go, hey, look, we're doing this in asphalt. We could do it in concrete. Why don't we modify to concrete and it'll last longer? And the same thing in maintenance. As they're maintaining it, they say, hey, Justin, I'm having to dig that ditch out regularly. If you would just pave that ditch or put concrete in the bottom of the ditch, I wouldn't have to do that all the time. Good idea. All right, so I'm going to touch on a few projects which hopefully are all familiar to everybody here, and if they're not, then I'm sorry. I don't have any other projects. So. I-75 overpass. This is like the elephant in the room, right? If you drive down the interstate, if you've gone out there, this is a really cool project. It was a great example of a partnership between the DOT and the county, okay? The county funded the majority of this interchange. I don't know if people know that. So the county actually came to the state and said, hey, we want to partner. We want to make this happen. There's a lot of growth in this area. We know it's not in your program. What do we have to do to advance it? And so they came to us, and the county provided a lot of funding for it. This is a huge improvement, traffic-wise. And this is an example of where we didn't see the issue, right? We didn't see it. The county saw the issue because the county knew what was going on. 52 widening. If you've driven out there, it's pretty much done. They're in what they call their punch list, which is just a contractor, adding a little bit more paint here or fixing a light that went out here, et cetera, just kind of the small things. So big widening project, Superior Construction built it. This is actually what's allowing us to transfer the old 52 back to the county to make that more of a slower speed, more community feel in a road. So 52 widening out of Suncoast to 41. So this is another one. We're wrapping it up. The contractor's finishing it up. It's substantially complete. These are huge infrastructure projects. This is another $53 million project. So already so far I've talked about $400 million in construction. So now the US 98 widening. So has anyone seen the work going on out there? You can't miss it, right? So this project, I'll tell you, is a good example of where all levels of government were watching. So does anyone here know Wilton Simpson? Okay. So Wilton came to us and actually said, you wouldn't believe the pattern that we're seeing with trucks out in East County. We said, okay. So we went out and studied it. And the percentage of trucks on US 98 widening was the highest in the state. There were more trucks on that road than anywhere else in the state of Florida, which is really hard to fathom when you think about all the semis you see on the interstate. But by percentage, there were more trucks on US 98 than anywhere else in the state. So we actually worked with the legislature, and they developed a program to fix problems like this. So this is a $150 million project, okay? And this project ties in with the bypass project around Dade City. It ties in with the project up in Hernando and Ridge Manor at 301 and 50. And this is really to provide a route for trucks to work their way around the major cities so you don't have heavy truck volume driving through downtown. So this kind of ties in what I was talking about, the 98 bypass with the big roundabout, if you haven't seen it. So this photo I wanted to include, and this is my last slide. I try to keep it short because I always bank for questions, so I try to keep things moving. So this is actually I guess my second to last slide because I got a safety message, but this is a picture from the ribbon cutting for the 52, right? What a cool moment. In this moment, no one knew we were taking this picture, but what a cool moment, right? Everybody's celebrating the fact that we actually accomplished a major infrastructure feat, which was a new road in Pasco County, and a key road in Pasco County. So anyway, I just took this picture. I thought it was really cool. You got a little bit of everybody in there. You got a state senator, you got a state rep, you got I think your entire county commission, maybe with the exception of one. And it's just a cool photo. And then the DOT secretary there in the middle. So this is a really cool opportunity, and it shows when everyone works together, we have success. So with that, there's my contact information, just real quick, but if not, I'm sure we can get it to you in another way. And then, of course, we always end with a safety message, so I figured it was fitting the fact that we have so many work zones right now in Pasco County. Just obviously be aware when you're in a work zone, and keep in mind the holidays, we want to get them home too safe. So please drive safely and enjoy your holiday.